Some people don't know the university they went to is actually haunted. As is the case with Cal State Channel Islands, one of the most haunted universities in America. That's because from 1933 to 1997, it was actually the Camarillo State Hospital, a mental asylum. The biggest one in America at that. It was often referred to as a warehouse for the mentally ill. Inside, patients were subjected to forced labor, shock therapy, and it was one of the first places in all of America to practice eugenics. In 1997, the asylum quickly closed its doors and was very hastily converted into a university. And that's what it remains today, except some of the parts are still around from the insane asylum. This week on my podcast, Heart Starts Pounding, I talked to someone who went inside the building and came face to face with something evil in the morgue. Click the link in my bio to hear it streaming exclusively on Amazon Music this week. And if you don't have a subscription, don't worry. Just click getamazonmusic.com/heartstartspounding for a free trial today. How did these people just disappear into thin air? So in 1900, a boat was carrying a man named Joseph Moore to an island in the Flannan Isles, where he was set to replace 3 lighthouse keepers. Except when he got there, the 3 men were nowhere to be found, and it looked like they left in a hurry. Half-eaten food was still on the table, and one of the men had left their coat behind. Interesting to note that the kitchen clock had also stopped working. After a full investigation, the men were never found, but a captain's log was retrieved. The men had actually written about a storm 3 days prior, but no one else in the area had reported there being a storm. They also mentioned in the log that the storm had passed, so that wouldn't have been the cause of their deaths. But the log had other concerning information in it, like the fact that their mental health was starting to deteriorate. But there was no sign of struggle, no sign of foul play, just an empty lighthouse. It's been 120 years and no sign of the men has ever been found. The leading theory is that a wave had swept them away, but at the time the sea was calm. And it's kind of hard to believe that 3 expert lighthousemen were swept away in a wave. We'll probably never know what happened. H.H. Holmes might be one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. But how did he get away with killing for so long? Holmes had actually built a hotel for travelers visiting the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, and he carefully constructed it to be able to conceal his dark intentions with his guests. See, Holmes had a large vault in the middle of his hotel, and he would trick women to go inside by asking them to grab him some papers. He would then pump gas into the vault to asphyxiate them. There were also stairs and hallways that went to nowhere, giving the hotel a maze-like feel. Holmes targeted women just in town for the weekend, knowing no one would look for them. Holmes confessed to 27 murders, but historians are convinced that there's more. Victims included 3 mistresses, the child of a mistress, and all 3 of his business partner's kids. I think these people captured a ghost in their live photo. So here we are, everything's looking normal, but then when you press it, what is that? I'll show it again in slow motion, but look, behind this boy, it's something on all fours. It feels demonic. There's something there. A body was just found in a barrel in Lake Mead dating back 40 years, and it's believed we're going to find a lot more. The lake is having the worst drought in 1,200 years, and so when this body was originally dumped, it could have been under 200 feet of water. For reference, Lake Mead is just outside of Las Vegas, meaning that it has been a dumping ground for mob activity for decades. Around the time the body was dumped, the most prevalent gang in Las Vegas was actually the Hole in the Wall gang, led by Frank Culata. Frank actually died in 2020, so if his gang was responsible for this death, we may never know. The police think that the body was dumped in the 70s or early 80s, and that the person died from a gunshot wound before being placed in the barrel. They were actually able to date the body because they found Kmart shoes sold around that time inside of the barrel. According to police reports, about 1 or 2 bodies are found per year inside of Lake Mead, so if this is drying up this fast, we might be about to find a lot more. A prisoner and a prison guard in Alabama just escaped together, leaving many to wonder if it was planned or if she was kidnapped. So last Friday, Casey White and Vicky White disappeared from an Alabama jail. Vicky was bringing Casey to a courthouse for a routine mental health check, but they have not been seen since. For reference, Casey was actually in jail for a crime spree he committed in 2015, and while he was in jail, he also confessed to the murder of a 58-year-old woman, also in 2015. So there's actually reason to believe that the 2 were in a relationship at the time of the disappearance. Vicky was giving Casey preferential treatment in the prison and also may have had him specifically transferred to her prison so they could be together. Vicky also was set to retire the day of the disappearance and had just sold her house for way under market value. Casey, on the other hand, claimed that if he ever got out of prison, he would kill his ex-girlfriend and his ex-girlfriend's sister, and now he has access to Vicky's weapons. Personally, I think that Casey got Vicky to fall in love with him so that she would help him escape. And he feels really dangerous, so hopefully both of them are found within the next couple days. Hello everyone. Today we have a video of someone walking through an abandoned hospital, which I'm too scared to watch. Okay. Okay, what was that? Okay, one more time with my head out of the way. I'm sorry, but that looks like a straight up demon. See if you can spot the ghost in this abandoned insane asylum in the UK. One more time in case you missed it. Oh my god. At first I thought maybe they got one of their friends to go in and pretend, but that looks ghostly. Hi dolls, welcome back to the series Celebrities You Didn't Know Were Kidnapped. Today we're going to be talking about the bizarre kidnapping of Frank Sinatra's son, Frank Sinatra Jr. So Frank Sinatra Jr. was just 19 years old in 1963, and he was an up-and-coming singer, probably wanting to be like his dad. He was performing at a lodge in Tahoe when two men approached his room saying that they were delivering a package. Within minutes, the men had tied up the singer's friend and blindfolded Frank Jr., leading him out a side door into a car. The singer's friend was able to untie himself pretty quickly, but by that point, Frank Jr. was already in a car heading 400 miles south to LA with the kidnappers. So these are the two guys that kidnapped him, and this guy, John Irwin, was the one that called Frank Sinatra Sr. that night, demanding $240,000 for his son's return. And to put that in perspective, that's like $2.2 million today. The FBI oversaw the transaction, and Frank Jr. was released after the ransom was paid. But it kind of gets a little weirder after that. So a lot of people still today think that this was just a publicity stunt because one of the kidnappers, Barry Keenan, knew the Sinatras and was like close with the family. He was Nancy Sinatra's friend at UCLA, and he saw this as an opportunity to borrow money from Frank Sinatra, fully intending to pay it back one day after he opened a business. He went to jail for 4 years for the kidnapping, but is still alive today and started a really successful real estate business and is worth millions of dollars. He also talks very publicly and often about the kidnapping. Stay tuned for more stories. Hello and welcome back to Celebrities You Didn't Know Were Kidnapped. So this is actually one of the scariest celebrity kidnapping stories I've ever heard. Today we're talking about Justin Long. This story takes place in 2007 when Justin was filming a movie in Birmingham, Alabama. Justin was out at a local bar after filming with some of the crew when he was approached by two local men. The men offered to take Justin and the production assistants to a casino, but insisted that they all drive together in their car. Justin actually didn't think much of this and agreed to go with them, but first wanted to go back to his hotel room to get some more money to gamble with. So he goes, grabs the money, gets back in the car with the guys, and the guys say that they need to make a pit stop at their house. And while they're at the house, one of them offers Justin some weed, and he takes one hit and realizes it's not weed. He starts immediately feeling like he's losing control of his body, and when he offers it back to the men, they don't want to smoke it. And it's at this point, too, that another man comes out of one of the rooms, goes, "That's the guy," grab the camera, and then they're all back in the car again. At this point, Justin's at least with it enough to know that they're not bringing him back to his hotel, even though he's begging them to. At one point, they actually drive him to the hotel, but don't let him get out and then drive away from it, sort of to taunt him or to try to calm him down or something. He knows that things are starting to look really dire and gets this overwhelming sense that he is going to die. So what he does next is he opens the car door going 30 miles an hour and jumps out of it. And actually, he's so clumsy as he does it, he falls under the car and the car runs over his leg. But he's actually able to still get up and flag down the next car that drives by, which just happened to be a cab. The PAs that he was with were also let go at this point, and to this day he has nerve damage, but obviously it could have been so much worse. Make sure you're following along for more in this series. Hi guys, welcome back to the series Celebrities You Didn't Know Were Kidnapped. Today we're talking about a highly requested one. This is the kidnapping of Benedict Cumberbatch. So in 2004, Benedict was filming in South Africa, a show for the BBC. So on the weekends, him and his castmates would go out and scuba dive, but this one particular weekend, Benedict wasn't feeling very well and he wanted to go home early. This would have required the group to leave at night, and the South African local that was with them said that leaving at night wasn't a great idea because the roads get really sketchy, but they ultimately decided to leave that very evening. As they're traveling back to set, they blow a tire and have to pull over to the side of the road and change it. And that's when a group of armed men storm out of the brush and completely ambush the group. It was a 2.5-hour ordeal that included bringing all of the actors to an ATM to pull out a bunch of cash. At one point, one of the assailants actually put Benedict in the trunk of the car, but he was able to talk his way out of it. He claimed that he would probably die in the trunk, and that was going to be way too much of a hassle for the assailants. So they pull Cumberbatch out of the trunk, tie the group together, and take off. And at that point, the actors are able to kind of make their way down the road and find someone to help them. And then the next day, they found out that someone that very night actually died in a very similar attack. So for how absolutely terrible the situation was, it could have been a lot worse. Make sure you're following along for more in this series. So this week it came out that Kristin Chenoweth was almost a victim of the Girl Scout murders. This is going to be part of a new series called Close Encounters about people who narrowly escaped a horrible fate, so follow along for more. Some quick backstory is in 1977, 3 girls were found murdered on their first night at Girl Scout camp in Oklahoma. They were all staying in a tent together, and their bodies were found on the trail leading to the camp showers. Now, in 1977, there was no way to test for DNA evidence, but a local man, Jean Leroy Hart, had actually escaped prison and was on the run. He was arrested for the murders, but was acquitted by a jury. There was actually a note found on the campgrounds 2 months earlier that said, "We are on a mission to kill 3 girls in Tent 1, but that note was discarded by the camp director, thinking it was a prank. Now, Broadway actress Kristin Chenoweth was actually supposed to be on that trip. She fell ill that weekend and was unable to go, but she says that it's haunted her entire life. So it wasn't until this year, 45 years after the murders took place, that we might finally have enough DNA evidence to convict Jean Leroy Hart. He passed away in 1979, but this might at least give some closure to the families. Hulu just released a documentary called Keeper of the Ashes about this entire event. Let me know if you're going to watch this weekend. Have you heard of the singer who narrowly escaped Ted Bundy? This is part of a series called Close Encounters, people who just barely escaped a terrible fate, so follow along for more. So Debbie Harry is the iconic singer from the band Blondie, and one night in 1970, before she was even famous, she was out late at night walking by herself in Manhattan. And that's when she was approached by an attractive man in a white Volkswagen Beetle. Sound familiar? She said she got a bad feeling from the man and said no, but he was pretty persistent. And she had been walking a while and her feet were hurting and she was tired, so eventually she kind of just gave in and got in the car. She quickly realized that something was not right with this car. The backseat had no window cranks and no handles, like there was no way for her to get out of the car. She starts panicking, but she has the wherewithal to reach her arm out of the open window and open the car door from the outside. But the man driving sees her do this, so he speeds up and takes a really sharp corner, throwing her out of the car onto the street. Years later, during the Ted Bundy trial, Debbie Harry was watching TV and immediately recognized him. Some people are skeptical and say that Ted Bundy might have been in Florida when Debbie reported seeing him, but all of these years, Debbie has remained steadfast in the fact that it was definitely him that picked her up, and all of the details she has noted about the car have been spot on. Bundy went on to confess to the murder of 30 women, but a lot of people think that number is a lot higher. So thank God she got out of that car. Would you buy this scary abandoned house with your friends? The Carlton Island Villa in upstate New York has been abandoned since 1927. And on top of that, its original owner, William Wyckoff, died the very first night he stayed in the house. But it's currently on sale for only $375,000, which in this economy is a steal. It's on the water. Some photos of the original layout still exist, and it's crazy to see how this turned into this, or how this became this. But if you're a millennial who doesn't know how you'll ever be able to afford a house, this might be the best chance you have. Sure, it needs some work, but just start a TikTok renovating this place. I'm sure it'll blow up and pay for itself. So send this to a friend that you would go in on splitting this with. Okay, wait till you see this creepy Zillow listing. So this house in South Carolina is being sold for $130,000 in 2017. But look at this caveat.
Upstairs apartment cannot be shown under any circumstances. Buyer assumes responsibility for the month-to-month tenancy of the upstairs apartment. Occupant has never paid and no security deposit is being held, but there is a lease in place. Yes, it does not make any sense. Please don't bother asking. So basically there's a squatter upstairs. Someone else also pointed out that it looks like there's water damage from a leak coming from the mysterious upstairs tenant. This photo is also posted with the listing, and I'm gonna assume that's paint just so I can sleep tonight. So would you buy a house for under market value if it meant that the Babadook was living upstairs rent-free? This is one of many creepy homes we're gonna investigate, so make sure you're following along. So I am living for scary Zillow listings, and listen to these terrifying home buying experiences. So this couple was buying a foreclosed home in Geneva, Illinois when they saw this on the wall. Do not buy this house. It is haunted, by 2 ghosts. 2 women, they hate men. Property built on graveyard, and this is a 1875, I cannot read that next part. The other properties, everyone has, I think that word is divorced. Please do not acquire if you are married. Awful things will happen to you. The couple ended up not buying that home, but it sounds like it was haunted by 2 roommates that make you leave your husband. And I can't tell if that message is more or less creepy than this next one that another couple found in a house. A couple found this written on the basement door, but it says, "Hi, my name is Jim and I will die in 2012. The couple also didn't buy this house, but if Jim died 10 years ago, I mean, in this market, you really can't be picky.